This video will provide you with a few reasons why your floor could be squeaking, and I'm probably not going to cover every reason, but for the most part, your floor is squeaking because something is moving. That is going to be the biggest reason why you have a floor squeak. So either the two pieces of wood are moving and rubbing against each other, or the wood is rubbing up against a piece of metal or even a nail, up the edge of a nail. So let's go ahead and take a look at a perfectly straight plywood sheeted floor. This could be OSB, oriented strand board also. So here we have everything is nice and straight. It's not going to ever change. You're probably not going to have a problem. With the new truss joists or I-joists, they seem to work pretty good. With conventionally framed lumber, though, this might not be the case. So if you have any sagging joists, any lumber that has shrank. Now keep in mind, I've seen a 2x12 that was 11.5 inches in width in just the period of about 2 months or less, shrink to 11 1/8 inches, so shrink 3/8 of an inch. That's not uncommon to have lumber shrink and create these problems. So what we have here, when we do have any bowed or curved joist, we usually means that the plywood has separated from the lumber. And if that's the case, it is going to be rubbing up against the nails. So something like this. Here's the nail, plywood. Noise is going to be coming from the plywood moving up and down as you step on it. So when you step on it, the plywood's going to go down. You step off of it, the plywood's going to go up, creating the noise. So the nail rubbing up against the plywood, this is probably going to be the absolute most common squeak that you're going to have in a floor. Next up on the list will be any form of blocking installed in the floor framing. This would include blocking for square edge plywood when you got to block the perimeter of the plywood, and mid-span blocking. Now these blocks, just like the joist, can shrink. They can rub up against each other. The joist can rub up against the block, and of course the blocking and the joist can rub up against the nails that are used to fasten everything together. Now mid-span blocks, same thing. They can shrink, they can move. The noise is going to come from the nails and rubbing up against the joist. And I remember my dad wouldn't put these in. He didn't want to put them in, and I got to the point where I wouldn't put them in if I didn't have to either, because they seem to be another source of squeaking. So we covered kind of the plywood, the lumber shrinking, the nails. Something else we need to consider will be any type of movement for the subflooring, whether it's plywood or OSB, in between the joist. So if I'm stepping on the center here, and this is the plywood isn't very strong, the joist might be overspanned. You might be dealing with 24-inch on center joist where they should have been 16 inches on center. And so you have movement here. So that movement could be when the plywood is rubbing up against the other plywood. So here we would have a situation where you would step maybe right here. This plywood would go down. This wouldn't be affected, but you're still going to have the plywood rubbing up against the plywood. Now let's take a look at the beams for the floor and the hangers, another possible squeak. This one doesn't seem to be as common as the other one, or at least I haven't came across it when doing repairs. But most of the time, if you have a floor and hangers and wood, you got wood joist, then you could have movement here, you could have movement in the hangers. Now the hangers usually require a way to fasten the hanger to the beam and connect the hanger to the joist so that they don't move. So you're going to have nails that go into the hanger, or nails that go through the hanger into the beam, and nails that go into the floor joist. And this usually prevents the joist from moving. However, if you don't have these nails, or if the joist is shrinking at a faster rate than the floor beam, again, something else that happens. I've even seen beams where you might have a beam that's a 4x12, it's 11.5 inches wide, and you have joists that's 11.25 inches wide. You're already starting with a problem. So what do? Raise the joist to make them flush at the top and leave a gap at the bottom of the hanger, put some shims underneath it, and that's probably what you should do anyway. But again, is this lumber going to shrink even further, or is it maxed out, kind of a thing? So most of your framing problems, subflooring squeaks, it's going to be, I said it's going to be caused from something rubbing up against each other. It can also be caused by the lumber movement, expanding and contracting. So if you have lumber that in a situation like this, it's actually moving up and down because it doesn't have the nails attached to through the hanger. So just imagine this: you have the plywood nailed, and so the plywood is nailed to the top of the joist. This will actually pull the joist up, and then when you step on it at a certain point, it's going to push it down a little bit, causing it to squeak. So you could actually try to fix this problem by re-nailing the sheathing or attaching screws through the sheathing to the joist, and your problem's not going to go away. And that would probably be because have something to do with the fact that the hangers haven't been securely fastened to the joist. So again, the joist rubbing up, as it's moving up and down, it's going to be squeaking. And of course, we can't forget about the nails that missed the joist. So they were nailed from the top. A lot of times it's difficult to see exactly where to place the nail as a carpenter, and you get one that misses just a little bit, and this can also create a squeaking floor. So you can imagine that the plywood has separated a little bit from the top of the joist, and you have a nail that's either moving up and down in the joist making the sound, or it's been pulled up and then now it's rubbing on the plywood. So these are another problem. And of course, these problems can usually be solved by attaching some screws or re-nailing the plywood, getting it to where there is no movement. That is usually going to be the solution to any of these problems. So you're simply going to use screws or nails to fix this problem. But again, like I said, this isn't a guarantee fix. This might not fix your problem if you have hangers here, or if you have mid-span blocks that are squeaking, or any other components that could be moving. Now, another problem I'd like to mention, and this is going to be common in more areas where you might have extreme temperature changes, you might have a lot of humidity, and you might have seasonal movement. You know, in the summertime it's squeaking, in the wintertime it isn't. You know, your lumber can actually absorb moisture and expand, dry out, and contract. So it can actually grow a little bit and shrink a little bit. And of course, this could create just enough movement to where you could have a squeak. So I am going to make another video, or a couple of more videos on this. I didn't cover 1x6 diagonal or sheathing where they just put 1x6 on before plywood was invented. And I also want to provide you with a few more ways to fix a few of these problems, and I will have links here in this video or in the video comment area when they are done.